What's up, guys? I just had my 35th birthday and I posted up an article on the Finding Flow newsletter about top 35 lessons that I wish I knew sooner. I always love reading these types of articles. I know Mark Manson also just made a video on his 40 lessons at 40, and Ryan Holiday always does a really great one each year for lessons and pieces of wisdom on his birthday. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to go through these lessons that I talked about in the newsletter and kind of go into some more details explaining, because I think a lot of them are helpful and you never know which one is going to be particularly useful for you until maybe you hear it said in a certain way or from a certain person. So the first one on the list is no one is coming to save you. The idea here is that whatever it is that you want to do or accomplish, don't expect somebody else to do it for you. My favorite illustration of no one is coming to save you comes from the Harry Potter series, particularly in The Prisoner of Azkaban. This is when Harry gets this realization that everything on his journey is going to need to have him be the hero of his own story and be at the forefront. So it's the scene where he's at the lake and he had just used the time turner. So previously he thought that his father came to save him because of the stag Patronus charm. But when he used the time turner and he's watching himself be, killed essentially by the Dementors, he's comes to the realization that it's Harry's future self that saves him. And this is a moment in the movies, and like I said, that turning point where he realizes that nobody is coming to save him and he's got to do it all on his own, essentially, as the hero. So the second one on the list is progress is everything. This is a phrase that I remind myself of all the time, and just the idea, kind of like how Tony Robbins talks about CONI, or constant and never-ending improvement. The idea is always focus on the progress and remember that it comes down to progress. If you're making progress, you're doing the right things. And so this is something that I have written on any of the lists of sort of my values and personal philosophy, because it's an important one to me. The third one on there is find your flow. And this should be pretty self-explanatory to the channel if you've been around for a while. But flow to me is all about finding the most meaning and fulfillment out of your life. And it's because in the flow state, we are in a peak state of performance and also a peak state of experience, which allows us to get a lot more life satisfaction and make meaning out of everything that we do. So that's why that's an important one, and my sort of slogan and life mantra, because it all comes down to flow. Now the next one is dare to dream, and really just the idea behind this is that we want to set those big audacious goals, dare to have a dream, because otherwise you are just counting down the days till you die. There's not really a whole lot that you're working for or working towards, and we all have these dreams that we want to achieve, and I think it's very important to dare to go after them as much as possible. So the fifth one on the list is early to bed, early to rise makes you healthy, wealthy, and wise. For me, this is an important one because I do like to rise early and also go to bed early. And so it's, that classic quote from Benjamin Franklin. And I think that it's an important one to at least kind of build into a mantra of thinking more about what you're doing that supports your goals and your bigger vision, than also being just so in the moment that you kind of stay up too late and don't really think about what's building into the long-term vision too and making that progress. The sixth one on the list is everyone is self-conscious about something. I came to this realization recently, and somebody who's interested in psychology, I think that it's important, especially if you are somebody who is particularly self-conscious about things, or maybe you're doing something hard like public speaking and you're getting nervous ahead of it. Remind yourself that everyone is self-conscious about something, and it kind of helps to, even the playing field and not think of everybody else being so much more confident and comfortable in their own skin than you are. And number 7 is never make a decision the same day it's presented to you. This one is important to think about, especially if you run your own business, or if you ever get those like sales calls where somebody tells you that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, you're never going to get it again. Keep in mind that it's almost never true that today is the final absolute day that you have to make some decision. And it's more a pressure tactic for sales and persuasion. I think this is an important one, especially if you're starting a business or if you're in a position of decision making and you tend to get excited or want to just say yes and move forward really quickly. It's always important to do like a little bit of a double take on yourself and make sure that you're not moving too hastily in a direction that is going to cost you in the long run. So I find that one really useful, and also as an excuse. The next one on the list is learn to say no. And sometimes it's saying no to these sales calls and these pressure situations. If you have these sort of mantras or personal philosophies like, sorry, I never make a decision the same day it's presented to me, it's going to be a pretty solid way of detecting those people that are maybe less than noble in their pursuits of persuasion, because you'll find that people get really irritated and upset with you if you tell them that and say like, I have to think about this, I'll let you know tomorrow. If that switches like a trigger in them, that they get really upset, or they kind of double down on saying that, oh yeah, this is something that you have to decide on by the end of today. To me, that's a sign of staying away from. There maybe is something a little bit suspect or sketchy going on there, and so it's useful with that next one. Like I said, learn to say no is an important lesson and skill to really have. Now, number 9 is between two choices, default to the more bold or interesting story. I learned this one and got this one from Noah Kagan, and I've added it to my personal philosophy list because I find it to be a good reminder. And going back to that dare to dream, it's something that helps you to remember that if you got a hard challenge or have to make a bold decision, this is something that is going to probably define your life, or at least give you a reminder that you can handle doing hard things, you can do bold things, and it's going to be worth the effort and the attempt, because you're going to have a more interesting story come out of it. Number 10 is remember the journey before destination. I like using this phrase specifically. It relates very much to the idea of progress is everything, but don't get too caught up in looking at that end goal without also focusing on how you're making progress and what you're doing in the moment of the journey. Number 11 is get good at handling discomfort and never get too comfortable. So this also is kind of something that pushes you towards progress, because you don't get stuck in feeling like everything is all good and comfortable. But handling discomfort's an important one, whether it's doing cold plunges or, again, learning to say no, another important one. These different things that we need to do in order to handle discomfort builds up a mental toughness in us, and these small attempts at like doing mindset challenges that will level up your mindset and help in all aspects of your life. Number 12 is reread more great books. And this is a reminder to myself particularly, and I've decided that about a quarter of the books that I read are going to be rereads of great books. more and more, once you've read like a certain amount, you start to find a lot of common patterns in the books that you read on different subjects, which is a good thing because it allows you to explore new threads, like I talked about in the recent video on how to pick a book to read. But a lot of the times it's those great books that really have the lessons that last and stand for you, and those are worth going back to regularly. Number 13 is Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. And this is the title of one of Cal Newport's books. It's also a great reminder that it's about mastery on our journey as much as it is about having, a range of skills. But being so good they can't ignore you is also having a sort of appreciation for the craft of what you're doing and making sure you always put your best effort forward. Number 14 is It's Not Easy Being Nice, but it's better than not being yourself. I think this is an important one. As a very nice person, somebody that gets complimented or people say that I'm nice all the time, it's an important thing because you could callous yourself and really like turn away from your personality and who you are as a person. But I think it's always better at the end of the day to really be yourself. And if niceness is something that you are about, use these other skills to sort of harden the things that are important to you. Things like learning to say no or getting comfortable being uncomfortable, but it's always still worthwhile to be a nice guy too. 15 is Care About People and Do Cool Things. Rob Bailey has this as sort of a backtrack line in one of his songs, and it always stands out to me as kind of an important thing, kind of like the bold and more interesting story idea, that doing the cool things, doing what you find interesting and passionate, and also caring about people is going to go a long way in not just your success, but also the satisfaction out of what you do. Number 16 is The Only Way Out is Through. And this is a bit of a reminder of the obstacle is the way, and the idea that whatever it is, the hardships that we're facing, the only way that we're going to get out of them is to go through them. And so that's an important one to remind yourself when you are going through hard times. 17 is Never do more today than you can recover from by tomorrow. This is the effortless rule from Greg McKeown's book, Effortless. And I like to add in a sort of extra step, which is number 18. And we want to stick to this rule as much as possible so that we can break it when we need to. It's important to have that recovery time, that recharge time, so that you can continue to perform your best. But it's also important to recognize that sometimes it is crunch time where we have to double down. And the more that we maintain that self-care and that balance, the better we're able to dive in full force when we need to. Number 19 is Take Extreme Ownership. This, if you're familiar with Jocko Willink, is sort of his personal philosophy and mantra. And it's a reminder for the lessons in ownership, and also goes back to that no one is coming to save you. You want to have sort of pride in doing the work and being self-reliant as much as possible. That's what taking ownership and extreme ownership is to me. Number 20 is Have something to look forward to each week. I think this is very important, especially as you sort of get older and get involved in your career and really focused and dialed down in work and building a family and all of that. There's a very easy chance of all the weeks starting to bleed from one to the next. If you have something to look forward to each and every week, it's a way to create, distance and space and like a sort of stop line in each week. Make something memorable about it. For me, it's often getting out for hikes and playing sports like ultimate frisbee and having that to look forward to each week, or spin classes, all of those different things. For me, a lot of it's exercise related because most of my work is spent, at a desk or doing like knowledge work. So find that balance and have that thing that you look forward to each week. 21 is a reminder that's important, I think, for all of us, that no matter what your situation looks like, there are people out there who have it much worse than you. And it's not to be, negative or try to like hold yourself up as like higher than everybody else, but it's important to remember that when you go through hard things, have that self-compassion, but also have that common humanity that other people are also going through hard challenges. And for one, you can handle it. And for two, it's important to just recognize that we're all facing hard things too, so that we're not too hard on each other. 22 is faithless is he who says farewell when the hour darkens. This is a quote from Gimli in the Fellowship of the Ring that I think is an important reminder of getting through hard times and not abandoning those who you care about who are also facing challenges. 23 is you already have everything you need. This is an important reminder about consumerism, or maybe a little bit of the minimalist philosophy of trying to be comfortable with what you have. I also like how Michael Easter talks about it as, think about your things as gear, not stuff. What's going to help you move forward with progress, not just accumulate and pile up stuff in your life. 24 is you could leave life right now. The classic Marcus Aurelius quote on reminding yourself each day that our time is finite and that it's important to get the most out of life because you never know when it's going to end. 25 is be built to move. This is probably worth a whole video in its own, but move well, sleep well, eat well, mobilize, walk, stand, stretch. And Kelly Surratt's book, Built to Move, is a great place to start with the 10 fundamental skills that we need in order to be built to move and function really well physically. 26 ties back into we can leave life right now. I realized the book 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman is a really great one. And to me, looking at being at 35, it's more like 2,300 weeks left for me at this point. 27, you can do harder things than you think you can. Keep that reminder in mind no matter what you're going through or what you're trying to push to accomplish. 28 is do things for their own sake and not some extrinsic goal. Become more autotelic. This is tied into my find your flow philosophy, and make sure that the things that you're working towards or that you're seeking out comes from an inherent sense of satisfaction and not just because you want to accomplish some sort of reward extrinsic to yourself. 29 is be a dog person. It will break your heart more than anything else, but it's worth it. 30 is get good at being bored. This is an important one because so many people talk about how, they can't focus or they're always constantly distracted by notifications and social media on their phone because they don't have the capacity to be bored for any length of time. And this is really a huge impact on our mental health, our ability to focus, and our ability to accomplish the things that we want the most. 31 is meditate daily. I think the important reminder here that I came to, and I've talked about in a recent series on meditation, is that even if you don't think you notice the effects, it's doing good things for you. 32 is love fully and trust openly. There's going to be hard challenges in relationships and trusting people, but it always is worth it at the end of the day to open yourself up more and be vulnerable like that. 33 is if you say you're going to do something, do it. Be accountable and reliable. 34 is forget about family feuds. Life is too short for that. Sometimes it is true that we're not as connected to our family and whatever, but I don't think that we should let money or greed or anything like that, issues, be the determining factor from estranging ourselves from our families and not having those people who will always be there for you when you really need them. If we pull ourselves away from family like that, then it's just really a loss of some of the most important relationships in our lives. And of course, there are times where we do have to set those hard boundaries with our family, and there's nothing wrong with that either. And 35, in all things, don't be too hasty. Slow down.